Hey everyone, this is Fritz. I'm always talking about get involved, run for office, Board of Education, even mayor. But today I am excited to interview Ruth Fortune, who is running for Congress. Ruth, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for making the time to meet with me.
Oh, well, we're excited to learn a little bit more about you. So first and foremost, who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I currently am a 37-year-old mom, wife, and attorney. My journey in the U.S. started as an undocumented child. My family moved here when I was 12 years old to my parents, myself, and my little brother. And the first 10 years in the U.S. we were undocumented. We first shared one bedroom with eight relatives, all of us. And I couldn't get a driver's permit when I turned 16. I couldn't get financial aid when I applied to go to college. Throughout college, I waitressed my way through college. And when I was about to graduate in 2010, this terrible earthquake of January 12 ravaged Haiti. And in response to the earthquake, the Obama administration gave Haitians who were here without documentation, TPS, temporary protected status. And that's the first time that my family and we had access to social security number and work authorization to be able to live here legally and work here lawfully. And it was life-changing for me. And it taught me that government can be a force for good. If you have the right people in positions of power, they can even use the tragedy that happened not within our own shores and transform that to a lifeline for people who are already struggling in many ways.
Let's talk a little bit about your platform and some of the things that are extremely important to you.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I can even ask, what are some of the first things you're going to go after once you get elected?
In addition to making sure that the fabric where we get to have our rights and not just essentially, if we disagree with this president, we don't get to be free human beings. We need to fight for democracy. I absolutely believe that every person who is working full time should be earning a living wage where they can afford the minimum cost of living. One of the first policies I want to advocate for is fighting to raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage, $25 an hour, plus tie it to inflation. Because we know inflation happens year over year, so that when inflation happens every year, people's wages also go up, especially for the people who are earning the least among us. That gives people a basic sense of dignity to be able to afford their rent, afford food, maybe save some money down the line to buy a home, live with some dignity, have a little bit of money left over. We do that in so many aspects of our policies. The amount of wealth that people can leave to their beneficiaries when they die, that's tied to inflation. So if you die this year versus next year versus 10 years from now, that amount keeps going up for inflation automatically. We should do that for living wages. We should also have healthcare as a right, not as a privilege. We have the resources in this country. We're spending so much money on emergency care and acute care because there's not the money on the front end to have the preventative care that people need. And we know that's actually more cost effective than paying for emergency care and more acute care. We need to fund our public schools. That's the path that I've used to the middle class. That is the path for most people to have a middle class life and attain their full potential. And many other things in between, and immigration reform, a path to citizenship for the hardworking immigrants who are here and who've contributed so much to our country.
I can already feel all the passion and determination that's in your voice as to why you're doing this. But for the sake of asking, why are you running for office?
I'm running for office because I came to this country as an undocumented child. I have found a way to achieve that American dream for myself and for my family. I am so incredibly grateful to the opportunities that I've had here, but I also understand that even American children in this country have not had the opportunities that I've had by virtue of the zip code that they happen to live in, or whether or not they get to have a two-parent household, or even any parent because of mass incarceration, generational poverty, redlining, all of these systemic issues that prevent people here from achieving their full potential in their version of the American dream. And right now, we have in Congress people who were born, for the most part, born with privilege, who've never had to overcome any systemic barriers. And they are the ones who keep promising us for generations now that they're the ones who we should entrust to change and remove those barriers. What I have come to learn, not just through my own life experiences, but also through my profession and the work that I do, is that those people are in positions of power specifically because those barriers prevent the rest of us from getting to where they are. And they are not the ones who are incentivized and committed to knocking down those barriers. We need to see beyond the flashy resumes, that very privileged people can present in front of us, and beyond the consultant persona that they present, and put more of us in those positions of power. Because until our voices and our experiences were at the decision table, we are not going to get policies to close the gap between what we say our values are and what the laws are that constrain who we can really be.
Tell us a little bit about your background and why you feel that you're qualified for this position.
I believe I'm uniquely qualified, especially at this time. At a time when immigrants are being demonized, villainized, and blamed for everything that's wrong with this country, I do think being an immigrant who myself has been undocumented, I can really counter that narrative and from a deeply personal space. And that personal experience is an experience that is lacking in Washington, D.C. But for people who want to hear the traditional experience, I've spent over a decade or so being first a financial advisor, then a trust and estate attorney. I've had a front row seat to see how our policies allow some people to accumulate wealth and pass that wealth down to generations, and also how those policies simply do not work for the majority of Americans. I've had people come see me as an attorney who are retired teachers, retired nurses, professionals, like I aspired to be one day. Now they're in their 80s and they realize they're getting sick. Everything they've worked for, their home, their retirement accounts, their savings, they realize with just the cost of care as they get older, they're going to go broke, and they're coming to me to see how can they ensure that doesn't happen. And I have to explain to them that unfortunately, it's not that you're still too rich. It's not that you're too poor. You're still too rich under Medicaid laws. I have to impoverish them down on paper so they can get the assistance that they need. So that's one way where our systems simply do not work for the real life on the ground experiences that people are having. Policies that have been failing people really from crib to coffin. The people in Washington, D.C. right now, they don't experience those struggles the way I have and the way that some of my clients have, the people in my communities have. And until we bring that experience, both the professional experience and also the lived experiences, we're not going to get laws that really address those issues at their root cause.
Now, I noticed on your website in large letters, you're running as a Democrat.
Yes.
Why? Why are you running as a Democrat?
I do identify as a Democrat. I'm frustrated with some Democratic leaders right now who are too timid, right? The calculations is because there's no term limits. They always have to think about their next election. How do they maintain their careers? And that's frustrating because the calculations for their career, sometimes it's at our expense. I got my TPS under the Obama administration. I do wholeheartedly believe that if it was a Trump administration or a Republican president at the time, the same earthquake would have ravaged Haiti and I would still have remained undocumented. I would have graduated college with a finance degree that's a very practical degree, but not able to use it. So there is one party that I think when it is in power does more to help working people and does more to use policy and the law to liberate people versus merely regulating our lives. And that is the Democratic Party. That's why I'm running as a Democrat, but I am running as a new kind of Democrat. I'm the Democrat who's bringing policy experience and just education as an attorney, but also my life experiences to inform what those policies should be. So that way they actually do have the outcomes and the impact on the ground and on people's lives that we want.
Who currently sits in the seat for District 1?
Currently, it's represented by Congressman John Larson, who was first elected in 1998, has been serving in 99, and has never faced a primary challenge. So that means every November, every 2 years, we go back and we only have the choice between Congressman Larson and if a Republican is challenging him, whoever that Republican is. I've lived here and I've been a citizen since 2017. I've only ever voted for him because I've never had a choice to decide and vote for anyone other than him. If you're 44 years old and you live in the 1st District, you have never had a chance to choose who your Democratic nominee for Congress is because we haven't had a primary since 1998. I am fighting for the first Democratic primary of the century in the 1st District. It is critically important because the primary is when we get to have a say and when we have a choice. We cannot be the party that blames Republicans for gerrymandering by picking their own voters and be a Democratic Party that is picking candidates and expect people to be excited and fall in line behind them. We have to let the people pick their own candidates because that's how we engage people, and that is the democratic and the morally right thing to do.
We live in a country where our system is about democracy. which means come election day, people must come out to vote. That is the only way that you will be elected. How are you getting your message out to the people? And if you can even go further than that, how are you going to ensure that people make it to the polls to vote for you?
Like every other successful movement, whether it was the suffrage movement, the civil rights movement, the labor movement, it takes people to make it happen. I want to build a people-powered campaign. If you're watching this now, what we need is for you to come, make calls, knock on doors with us to make sure people know what's at stake for them. And I do want to be the kind of candidate who doesn't just keep in touch and show up when I want to be elected. I want the community to remain involved. The way that I can really push and convince my colleagues in Congress and other people to support a living wage that's $25 an hour tied to inflation is by having people say, yes, that's what they want. Call their Congress members. Have that movement to substantiate and propel forward the policies that I'm advocating for.
A question I love to ask individuals when they're running for office, let's say you win. What is the legacy? Looking back, when you look into the history books and young children are reading about you, what is that legacy that you want them to think about for you to have moving forward, even after you're long gone?
I think more than anything, the legacy that I would want is that we know whoever we are, if we want to serve and be of service, you should have an opportunity to do that. Because the systemic barriers to keeping people like me out of office, particularly a place like Congress, I can tell you they are steeper than the systemic barriers I've faced as an undocumented child. The power perpetuates itself when it keeps one type of person in power. And if nothing else, I want everyone who wants to help their communities to feel like if they're willing to put in the time and the hard work, they should go for it and do it and not listen to what people say. I've learned that my voice is most needed, sometimes where it's least welcome. Because so many times I'm in a room, I am the only person who looks like me. I'm the only person who's had the experiences that I've had in my life. And if I'm not there to share that, if I'm not there to voice that, it is not being said, and those decisions are being made with people like me not being factored at all. So if nothing else, the legacy is, I want you to dare to dream and dare to make a difference and fight for it. Don't let people hold you back.
Are you able to explain, obviously Hartford, what are the surrounding towns?
It's a large geographic area. It's roughly 1/5 of the state, since we have 5 congressional districts. And it's a very diverse congressional district. There's people of all backgrounds, all asset levels, all lines of work. There's the city of Hartford, there's more rural areas, more suburban areas. So it's a very diverse district, and we want to have people who represent that full spectrum of the experiences that we have in this district.
So for the people who are listening right now that are within that area or even outside in other parts of the state that want to, one, find you and come and volunteer, how do we find you?
You should check out my website, ruthfortuneforcongress.com. You're able to sign up on my website to volunteer or sign up for the newsletter to stay in touch. And we would love to have you volunteer. Again, this is a people-powered campaign. The only way you get people who are not born into privilege, who are not independently wealthy into Congress, is to have a very strong grassroots campaign. And your time volunteering, making calls, knocking on doors, and if it comes to it, being someone who's collecting signatures to make sure I am on the ballot, all of that is absolutely invaluable.
Talk a little bit about ballot access in Connecticut.
Absolutely. Connecticut has the most restrictive ballot access laws in the country. So what that means is, even though I've declared my candidacy by filling out all of the paperwork at the federal level, to get on the ballot in Connecticut, because each election is administered by the state, it's one of the most challenging processes. I have to first get delegates at a convention. So there's 450 delegates. If I don't get enough delegates, 15% of them, to support me, then I have a 42-day window to collect thousands of signatures to get on the ballot. And that doesn't happen until the spring, and the election is in August. So I will have been in the race for about a year before I know whether or not I get on the ballot. And this is where I say, if you're a registered voter in Connecticut and you're a registered Democrat in Connecticut, even if you're not in this district, you can help by collecting signatures for us through registered Democrats here in this district, because it is not a guarantee that I'll get the delegate support that I need at the convention. Historically, none of our Congress members, not any of the 5, have ever faced a primary challenge because no one who's tried to challenge them have gotten past the convention. So this would be a historic first in Connecticut to have a sitting member of Congress be challenged. And even though we have 5 Democratic Congress members, we don't have 5 Democratic Congress members who represent the experiences of people in Connecticut. And until we have that, not just in Connecticut, but at the national level, where all 435 Congress members and 100 senators fully represent the broad lived experiences and diversity of the people they represent, we're not going to get policies that really address the everyday issues that we all face and struggle with.
All right, we want to know more about you. So you came here with your family. You were in a 1-bedroom home. Talk to me a little bit more about that experience. Were you going to school? Did you know English? Tell me a little bit about that.
When I came here, I was 12. That was in July of 2000. I did not speak any English. I think I knew maybe one sentence. How are you? I'm fine. Even though I took English in Haiti, but it was just, I took 4 other languages in addition to English, so I wasn't learning a ton of English. We shared 1 bedroom, 8 of us in my aunt's house. It was a 3-bedroom house where at some point like 27 of us lived in that one house. And I did go to school. I was really fortunate that we landed in Long Island in New York, where Long Island has really high property taxes, but the schools for the most part are funded. I got through my ESL, English as a Second Language program, in 7th grade, the first year I got here, and I moved to the regular classes by 8th grade, and then onto honors classes. And by the time I got to high school, I had AP classes. My school even paid for programs for me to go to Syracuse University over the summer after my junior year in high school to take college classes. So even though I was a first generation student to ever apply and go to college, by the time senior year came around, I knew I had already gone to college and I had done well. So it wasn't a question of if, but really which school can I go to and afford to pay, because I knew that I couldn't get any financial aid.
So your story is really, a lot of people are actually going through that right now. So for many Haitians that are living in America that went through the TPS program recently in the last couple of years, their status is changing. Could potentially change even in February. And they're scared. There are people who are not looking to leave their house. I mean, they don't know what's next. And, people have already fled and went to another country. So talk to me a little bit about that, and what message would you have even for those families?
It's really scary. I remember living with the fear of deportation. I mean, I remember when I first learned English, I probably was still in middle school, and a friend of mine told me I still sounded so foreign and so Haitian. And I started renting books with audio tape so I could diminish my accent, because my fear was that I'm already undocumented. I can't stand out as a foreigner and then potentially get deported because I sound so foreign and somebody finds me out, so to speak. And I subsequently thought I was being paranoid to be so fearful. And then recently, the Supreme Court has now authorized ICE agents to racially profile people, arrest them because they sound like they speak with an accent or they work at a low-wage job. So my biggest fears that never quite came to fruition during my time when I was undocumented have all, beyond my greatest fears, are all happening now. And it's really scary. And as an attorney, I cannot in good conscience, if you're someone in the US and you're not a citizen, this administration treats you like you don't have First Amendment rights or any constitutional rights. And it's one of the reasons why I am stepping up as a naturalized citizen, even though my own citizenship is under attack because the Trump administration is trying to denaturalize people like me. I have so much more privilege now than I did 25 years ago when I was undocumented and I couldn't speak a word of English and I didn't know how to navigate our systems the way I do now. I feel like I can take that heat. I can now be a voice and speak up for the 12-year-old me who did not have someone who could speak for her at the time. And for all the many people who now cannot speak up, are living with the fear that I once lived with, and with an administration that is singularly focused on making immigrants' lives absolutely miserable. The funding that we're giving to ICE is not only not making us safer because they're terrorizing our communities, we're taking away people who have been trying to reduce and find people who are doing human trafficking children for really, really terrible crimes. We're giving up pursuing those types of people because this president and his proxies think that we immigrants, people who built this country, people who come here to work hard and build a life for themselves, he's calling us the worst of the worst. And that is absolutely not true.
What type of law do you practice?
I am a trust and estate attorney. So I work with people who, the one thing all of my clients have in common when they come to see me for their planning needs is that they've earned a living wage. They've earned enough that they're not thinking only day to day anymore. They can plan for their future. They can plan for a legacy that they can leave behind. That's the America that I think can be possible for so many people, where you're not only just thinking about what do you put on the table for food today or the rent tomorrow. You can plan for a legacy. You can dare to dream and achieve your full potential. But this administration is making that so much harder. The path and opportunities that I had, even as an undocumented child, is now less accessible to even American children in many parts of this country, and that's not acceptable.
So now, are there legal routes that people right now who are scared, who don't know what to do, what are some of the options for them?
Immigration laws in this country are incredibly unfair and immoral. If I did not marry my husband, who was a US citizen, I would still have TPS right now, and I'd be subject to deportation this coming February. Even though I had lived here since I was 12, I went to college, I have a law degree, I work as an attorney, none of those things would have gotten me a path to citizenship, but for my marriage to my husband. So for a lot of people who are here, who have been here, some of them for decades, who worked here, who built their families here, who bought their homes here, who started businesses here, immigrants are really hardworking and very entrepreneurial people. For a lot of these people, depending on how they got here and the status that they currently have or the lack of status, there is no path for them to get to a green card or even citizenship. And that's why we have to fight for a path to citizenship for the people who are here and who've been working hard.
So there's this misconception, and maybe we can clarify it right now. There are those that, who say, hey, individuals are coming to this country and they're illegally coming into this country, and those are the individuals that we need to get out right now. And again, whether it's there are neighbors, caregivers, teachers, people working at grocery stores, they're illegal, they need to get out. But then there's also the group of individuals who did come through the TPS program, who had an attorney or somebody, they filed the paperwork, and essentially you can say that they legally came into this country. So there's two groups here. I don't know if ICE is necessarily making that determination between the two, and that is why there are individuals, in the community who are saying, hey, listen, they all just need to go. What can you say in regards to these two groups? Is there, if you're already here in this country, should you be allowed to be here? If you did go through the TPS program, if you didn't, talk to us a little bit about that.
The Trump administration and USCIS, which is the agency that all of these ICE officers work for, they don't care about what status you have right now. Whether you came through that CHNV program, which was under the Biden administration, where lots of Haitians got to come along with Cubans, Venezuelans, and people from Nicaragua, they've already stopped that for so many people. So if you came under that program, you came here lawfully, they prematurely terminated that type of status. They're terminating TPS for other countries that have had TPS. They're revoking people's green cards. They're detaining people at citizenship interviews. I think there was this conception that Trump is going to go for the illegal immigrants, the people who are undocumented. The reality is we don't have tens of millions of undocumented immigrants. What he's doing is criminalizing people for just being here and terminating the lawful temporary statuses that people have had, because that's how you try to get to tens of millions of deportations. I can tell you, I'm a naturalized US citizen. And my husband and I, the one key conversation we had before I declared my candidacy was, what is our fighting plan if he comes for my own citizenship? Because for me, it might be an if, but for a lot of people, it's a matter of when, because that is the plan.